Feels good. Feels good to talk indoor and arena football yet again. Another week has come and has gone. You know, shout out to the Carolina Cobras, man. They did a lot of stuff, just behind the scenes and everything like that. They extended the partnership with the Carolina Predators. They have new owners in place. They've paid all their players. They've done everything they need to do. Now it's just, getting next year in order. Will they be able to come around next year? I hope so. I really hope so. I think the indoor and arena football scene needs a state like Carolina. They're trying to do this unified Carolina front of unifying North and South Carolina with the team and everything like that. So, I think all this is good. All this is real fun and swell. Again, does Carolina come back next year, from dormancy? Time will tell, but usually most of the time that means you don't. But, when you announce that you're dormant, but, some teams have come back, it's not set in stone. I'll say that it's not set in complete stone. Of course, the Arena League begins this Saturday. Preseason action. There's a couple preseason games. I don't really like preseason games, but hey, some of these teams want 5 home games. They're getting 5 home games. They're getting 5 home games this year, which is good, real good. And the Entertainment Football Association, they have a deal that was announced today with MSG Networks. The schedule's been revised a little bit, and it is now officially confirmed. It will be June the 14th when the Entertainment Football Association kicks off. All the teams have arenas. The championship game will be played the weekend of August the 16th, which means 2 things. We will have some indoor and arena football the weekend of August the 16th. Originally, I don't think there was going to be anything there. I was probably going to take that week off for the national championship. And there was just going to be no arena ball that week because I don't think the TAL would be, on that day. But, who knows? I could be completely wrong. Could be wrong, but from the looks of it, I haven't seen, anything that said that the TAL would have a championship on the weekend of the 16th at this moment. But we'll find out when we find out. But yeah, now we have a championship, that's going to be played on August 16th, which means I'm going to adjust some things. So now the entire month of August, we'll talk this weekend indoor football. So every Tuesday in August, instead of the first 2, we'll have this weekend indoor football. Thank you, Entertainment Football Association, for kind of, making things the way they need to be, which is me moving some college football days around. So I will move those to Wednesday. Last couple Wednesdays in August will be for college football, and then Tuesday, of course, will still be your regular old this weekend indoor football. The other announcement is I have tentatively secured the 6th interview for this year. I may do more throughout the summer. It kind of depends on me. It kind of depends on how I feel, but I definitely have secured it. As we all know, there are, of course, some things going on behind the scenes of Claire that I couldn't get the interview, done. So I'm having to go with some of the backup plans and everything like that. So, it's no slight to the guy that I'm going to mention, which I'll talk about. We'll get to that point when that time comes. But yeah. So be on the lookout, everybody. At some point this week, or maybe this weekend even, which, I can do this weekend, but at the same time, who knows? Like, today is just, I did not expect today to be the way it has been. So, where do we begin? Really, Billings lost again, which means Steve Titus went on a little bit of a rant yet again, and I get where he's coming from. Nobody's coming to see Billings. The rent is outrageously high at the arena, everything like that. I get where he's coming from. He might even move the team next year. Who knows? But I think, at the same time, I think Billings is just not that great of a football team, this year. Jalen Morton's been moving around, everything like that. And I swear this is like apparently this is only the fourth time that Oregon and Washington faced off. I swear they faced off every week this year. If that makes any sense. How has this happened 4 times already? Oregon keeps beating the brakes off of Washington because Washington's not that great at all. The AF1 playoff format is only 4 teams, so the scab team of Corpus Christi, is it technically in currently. Currently, they're in. I know. So, yeah. So I don't know where to begin. Obviously, Albany has clinched. They are undefeated. They're the only unbeaten team, left in the AF1. So, I mean, let me tell you. AF1 this year has been much less quality, than the Arena League from last year. I know, which is crazy. It was just a crazy thing to say, but honestly, it just was a little bit better. I had to edit my ticker there for a second. It just was a little bit different last year, in my personal opinion. But I don't know, man. So let's talk. Oh, Lord, I can't speak for a second. Where do I go next? Where do I go next with this? So, IFL, Jacksonville wins pretty easily, to be quite honest. Arizona wins, another tight game, but I mean, again, it is Arizona. They have been playing really, really good football lately. Iowa's still not good, losing to Green Bay the way they did. Quad City had some nice Halloween uniforms, but ultimately, that did not matter. They lost. I know, I'm shocked too, but I mean, the Quad Neal, has been hurt. There's been some things going on in Quad City, where, it's like, oh, maybe they need to resign some guys. And again, there's been so much going on with the signings and stuff lately. And I'm just sitting here like, what? What is this? San Antonio won this week. Crazy way for them to win. Northern Arizona also won this week, beating Massachusetts. Just crazy. Naz used to be the worst team in the league. Have it not. That's really it from the IFL, to be quite honest. There's some good stuff that's been happening. Oh yeah, Bay Area won against Tucson, but I don't think Tucson's that great either. Like, I swear, there's a lot of muck. Once we get past like Bay Area, Quad City, Arizona, once we get past those teams, there's a little bit. There's some teams like Vegas and Green Bay, that are pretty good, but that muck at the bottom, Massachusetts, Iowa. Hell, even I would say I'd say Fishers. They haven't been doing great lately, and then Iowa, Mass, and Northern Arizona. But I mean, Northern Arizona beat Massachusetts, so who knows who's at the muck of the muck? But man, what a waste for those Halloween uniforms, the purple uniforms the Quad City had. What a waste. Crazy. Tulsa, has won 4 in a row. Really, really good football team. Tulsa Fighters are finally turning into a football team that can be watchable. Meanwhile, in the NAL, Wheeling defeated Sioux City. Colorado has essentially locked up a playoff spot. They beat the brakes off of Idaho. Beaumont lost to Columbus, though. I'm kind of sad about that. Beaumont did lose to Columbus. And then basically the game that shouldn't have been the game at all, Tyrone Washington's Dallas Falcons come into Shreveport. They're tied 38-38 at the end of regulation. Fight breaks out at the end of regulation. I don't know if that game's still up or not. Some people was asking. I think the game is still up. And of course, NAL games go long stretches of time. And this game decided to go crazy at the end. If a play happened, And then the brawl started. I think it was a Shreveport player that got knocked down and everything like that. And then, the carnage started after that. Basically, Dallas couldn't field enough players. Apparently, Shreveport had enough players to field a team, at least for like a drive or two. But yeah, Dallas ended up forfeiting with a 1-point, overtime loss, technically. Honestly, the game is, I'm just going to consider it a tie. Again, it's a non-league game. It shouldn't even gotten to this point again in the NAL because, remember the last time a non-league team, played up to snuff with an NAL team. They actually won that game. Dallas could have even won this game, had that fight not broken out. I'm at a loss for words here. I'm at a loss for words. At least we have only one of these games left, though. So the Alabama Empire, remember, will be coming this week to play. Yeah, I'm kind of done with the NAL preseason games at this point. And non-league games. It's not even good with the TAL doesn't, but it is what it is. It is what it is. A forfeit in overtime because somebody didn't have enough players. Just what kind of you can't even write this up in sitcoms like this. This is just hilarious. You just can't write it up like that. Meanwhile, AL2 Georgia lost for the first time. Michigan won again. Jersey lost. The Carolina Predators won. And yeah, AL2 is, AL2ing in the New Jersey Roughnecks, which, I want to talk about the New Jersey Roughnecks, at some point. Yeah. And so, did you know that Mississippi has a field? Like they have an actual field. I think that was the field where it was like, like half the dasher boards were like, looking kind of crazy or something like that, from a long time back. Where you saw the photo of, Mississippi's field, and it just didn't look up the stuff. It didn't look great, but I'm still kind of shocked that they actually have a field that looks playable, and they're one of the only AL2 teams I think that has an actual field. I know, whatever, man, whatever. I'm just kind of lost at this point, with the AL2. It's happening. I think there's some real good talent, there and everything like that. If my championship prediction is still Jersey versus Georgia, then that's the championship prediction. But yeah, it's a little bit confusing week to week, because there's some really really bad teams like Pittsburgh. And, of course, there's some really, really good teams like Georgia and Jersey, but they just had an off week this week, or so they say. Could last even longer than that, but you never know. So, yeah, most impressed with the Carolina Cobras this week. Everybody else continue to do what you do best. Everybody continue to do what they do best. It's really something when, Albany's the only unbeaten team left, and you just don't know what to say at this point because the AF1 is looking very predictable right now. IFL is still going strong, and AL is, comedic, still going strong. AF1 going strong. We're in the healthiest part of the season. This is the healthy part of the season. Everybody's playing. Everybody's doing something. Everybody's having something going on. Once we get to the dog days of summer, it's just going to be indoor arena football from here on out. I can't wait. Well, get on up out of here. Talk to you later. Again, are you excited about the Entertainment Football Association's new deal? Are you excited about anything, in the IFL that's been happening? There's been some good stuff going on. Good games recently. NAL also some really good games recently. AF1 not so much, but the promise is there. The promise is there, and that's all that matters. All right, I'm gonna get out of here, and I'll see you on Monday after the national championship in D1 men's lacrosse.